Welcome to your new SideQuest podcast with the intention of helping you through the game of life with mindful reframing and awareness as we all move through this journey called the human experience. It's time to level up. Hello everyone, welcome to your new SideQuest, when love means losing yourself.
Today, we are discussing this concept of changing oneself in order to be chosen. So, Derek, describe a recent reel that you sent to me.
So yeah, I shared this reel to Zach recently because I was scrolling on Instagram and it kind of hit home for a lot of reasons. Basically, the reel was exploring about how when there are times when you are not chosen, that would be some stupid indicator that you'd have to try harder or, reshape yourself in order to be chosen. And I could relate to this reel because, in a previous episode, we discussed how, growing up, I was constantly compared to, and it it made me like establish this limiting belief that I had to perform or transform myself in order to earn love from my caregivers. It followed me up to my adult relationships where, when I first started dating, I thought I had to be someone else. Like I had to be some macho kid or some guy that wears nice shoes or like
Yeah.
some person who likes certain drinks. Yeah, especially with the drinks. Like I don't even like alcohol,
hmm
but like I would say that I do like alcohol because that made me feel like because I would be easier to like.
Yeah, you'd be like the fun guy, right?
But like honestly, I never really liked alcohol. I remember getting really messed up on prom night just because I just wanted to fit in, and
Yeah, and then you told me that your date didn't end up being with you afterwards anyway, right?
yeah, that was actually a trigger. Like that made me get really really messed up. I almost could have died. Like I remember that I drank so much that I remember
Like you blacked out and everything, right?
it wasn't really almost there. Almost backed out, but I remember just like puking everywhere. Like,
Jesus.
and like, oh my God. So like that, like I sacrificed my own like values in order to be accepted and loved. Overall, I would say in my experience, I didn't want to be loved as me. I just wanted to become someone who felt easier to love.
hmm
Zach, maybe explain maybe a recent situation where you felt like you had to change yourself in order to be chosen.
hmm I I definitely relate to in that feeling or that experience that you described growing up where like you were being compared to, and so when you weren't chosen, that made you try harder to get the love that you're supposed to receive by either your caregivers or your friends or yeah, just like anyone that was supposed to give you that love at the time. So for me, like I remember way back in high school, like just the crushes that I liked, they would like talking to them, they would describe their ideal type. And so I would like subconsciously kind of compare myself to those like checklists that they would describe like, oh, I want a guy that's into sports or I want a guy that's like really smart and
So did you try to change your
agreed.
identity to match that on the checklist?
Yeah, at times I definitely critiqued myself and I wanted to become that same person that they were describing, but lo and behold, like it would change my identity over the years. And so, a recent experience that I had was, um, I guess like subconsciously I do this even now, but like whenever I look through social media and I see the person that I like have like certain interests, like they watch maybe a certain show, like for example, White Lotus or something. I would try to like get myself into that show
So that you have
and
a
relate
common
to it.
ground
Yeah,
to kind of like talk to her about.
have a common ground and be able to like earn some respect and love from her and stuff. So
Mhm.
it's not really like coming from a genuine place, but that's just kind of a small example.
It's kind of more like tactics then, like you're trying to manipulate like the girl's interest in your favor by exploring her interests.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exploring interest and even maybe down to like the personality too. Like I remember it just not liking like how quiet I am at times. And then so I would try to become like kind of like very confident and boisterous and loud, which is not someone I am. So I just remember like, yeah, um, like a while back, just trying to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, I could totally relate, especially in high school where you don't actually really know yourself, so you kind of
Yeah.
try to be someone else, or like you try to be people that you think are always chosen or are always popular, or they have something you don't, so you try them out, and that I guess I can totally understand, because we didn't have really much time to really get to know ourselves during like the younger years.
Yeah. And plus, media too, and just seeing even like the loud, confident types being glorified.
Yeah, I hate that because
Yeah.
like that's more obnoxious to me than
Hmm.
like than anything. And why do they get all the fucking credit, or the girls,
Yeah, like they
like
look alpha or something.
but like in overall, we in this world we're split. There are equal amount of people who are extroverts like that, and then equal amount of people who are introverts like me. Like I'm
Hmm.
naturally introverted, but I can turn on my extrovert if I need to.
Yeah.
But I'm not no loud or like macho man. Like I'm not any of those, like I don't have any of those qualities.
Yeah. There's something to be said about that certain kind of quietness that people like us embody. It's not like like outwardly attractive, but I feel like in itself it's very attractive because you draw in like someone who is like just curious about you. That's that quiet confidence.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I'm speaking to people who are like quiet and they don't really need to like express themselves fully.
Yeah, I just hate how, like you said, like the extroverts are over glorified. The quiet confidence in itself is real confidence,
Mhm.
versus like being loud is actually a sign of insecurity. Because like the loudest person in the room is
Yeah.
often the most insecure one.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful realization.
So let's look into the psychology behind this pattern of trying to change ourselves to be chosen.
Yeah. In a way, it's kind of like abandoning yourself, right? Because you're losing who you are
Hmm.
just to try to mold into someone else's ideal or their picture.
So basically, it's the fear of rejection, which is basically abandonment, and then it goes to that feeling of not feeling enough, like you're not enough as you are. And also, it was our old emotional wounds back in childhood that teach us that, love is conditional,
Hmm.
which it is. Romantic love is conditional.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just love a person or get romantically in love with a person if they're like a dumbass, or like you have certain standards. That's why it's
Right.
conditional.
Yeah, and there's certain qualities that feel familiar to you that draw you into that person.
Hmm.
That other person you're attracted to could remind you of like a parent or trigger a certain situation where you're just drawn to them.
Hmm.
But it's ironic how our romantic lives trigger like the deepest parts of ourselves, right?
Yeah, it's just because at the beginning stages in our early lives, we are taught like in that way that love is a certain way, because that's all we knew.
Yeah, we're basically taught how to give and receive love by our earliest
Hmm.
caregivers.
Also, there are trauma responses behind this changing of self to be chosen, which is fight, which basically is proving yourself, right?
Hmm.
Fawn, pleasing, which is something I do like
Yeah.
a lot, or freeze, which is overthink.
There's also one more that I feel like we should add here too, which is flight.
Hmm.
And flight, I think, is like common around avoidance because they tend to push people away
Hmm.
if they feel like they're getting too close to someone or they're losing themselves in the relationship. So that's also another trauma response to mention too.
So, in relation to the psychology behind changing oneself in order to be chosen, in what way does the flight response relate? What do you think?
So I feel like the flight response relates to trying to be chosen because you're essentially like abandoning someone who is healthy for you because maybe you just don't you just don't feel yourself in that relationship. Like I'm personally not an avoidant
Mm.
myself, but from what I've learned from just watching videos about people who are avoidants and share their relationship, it seems like they are trying hard to not um to not feel vulnerable in a situation.
I see. So basically, you're talking about like if a person feels like they're not chosen,
Hmm.
they don't want to change themselves, so they just run away.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. So there's also this whole belief system that was embedded to us when we were kids watching like things like Disney movies, right? Where you have to slay the fucking dragon in order
Yeah,
to
you
get
have
the
to save
girl.
the damsel in distress.
Yeah, and we have this societal pressure to win love, especially in, our dating culture.
Yeah.
Where
I'm very guilty of this I have an because I have an anxious attachment style, so I try to earn the love from someone who is emotionally unavailable.
I do that too, when, it triggers me mostly when they go silent or they ghost or they don't have any type of communication whatsoever coming from them,
Yeah.
where I did like all the showing up versus them just not replying. Like for me, what frustrates me the most is when I communicated that, oh, I like communication and like I like fast replies, just for reassurance, but
Hmm.
then like they would be like, "Oh yeah, me too," but then when shit hits the fan, they're not showing up.
Yeah. They're basically being hypocritical.
Yeah, it just annoys me so much, and I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to deal with that kind of situation again, but it keeps happening.
Yeah. I feel that same way too about silences, how we try to fill those gaps in with our own experiences, and most of the time it's negative, and I just really hate it because it's like playing games.
Hmm.
An example of this would be like whenever I post on stories on Instagram and I see someone that I'm interested in just constantly view it, or like they're the first ones to see it, and so it gives me like that slight bit of hope
The
and
breadcrumbs.
validation. Yeah, breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
But in reality, I know like story viewing is like the lowest level of investment.
Yeah, they're probably just taking a shit and just like moving through the
Yeah, like
stories.
doom scrolling or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like I started to pursue someone that I thought was interested in me too, because I thought they were like invested in the things I was doing in my life, and when I was direct with them and they didn't reciprocate, it felt really bad.
Did you feel like you had to chase them down at that time?
Not not so desperately chase them down, but it was the act of like trying to find an answer from them
Hmm.
when really like the answer was obvious that they weren't putting in effort or whatever, or they weren't initiating. So for me to try to have to find that validation or that answer was was kind of like me losing myself in the process too.
Well, that happens a lot, especially in terms of this topic, because when you try to change your own self, you're self-abandoning. You're losing yourself
Yeah.
in order to get some type of validation from someone else.
Yeah, it can definitely be frustrating because in that process, you're like, oh, what do I have to do to earn your love?
To be loved, to be chosen.
Yeah.
Fuck. What's the answer, right? Which comes to our mindful reframing at times when you are not chosen.
You weren't rejected because you weren't enough. You were trying to be someone you're not. You don't need to change to be chosen. You need to choose yourself first so that when love comes, it's not earned, it's received. Because the love that requires you to become someone else isn't love, it's performance.
So yeah, stop performing and start receiving
Yeah.
genuine love. Okay, we'll just end it right here.
All right. So If you guys found value in this podcast, be sure to give us 5 stars on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts if you're listening there. If you're watching this video on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And thank you, everyone, for listening to our podcast. And this is your new side quest.
Side quest complete.